everybody. Thank you for tuning in. You've reached the Real Estate Fix. I'm your host, Rich Szerman, on KHTS 98.1 FM, AM 1220, your hometown station. Thank you guys for tuning in this morning. I appreciate it. We're going to talk about all kinds of good real estate stuff today. But before we get into the real estate stuff, there's something I want to promote. There's a great event going on over in Leona Valley. That's the BBMS Happy Children Memorial Fund. They're having a raffle and a car show and all kinds of good stuff at Casa Gutierrez at 8847 Elizabeth Lake Road in Leona Valley. It's going off on this Sunday, which I think is the 6th, October 6th. Starts at 10 a.m., runs to 3 p.m., and the car show starts starts at that same time and runs even later. If you do have a classic car and you want to enter it in, $25, you're in the car show. They're giving out trophies. It'll be very cool. They're still taking entries if you're into it. But yeah, Casa Gutierrez in Lake Elizabeth in Leona Valley on Lake Elizabeth Road, 8847 Lake Elizabeth Road. It's for a good cause. It's called the BBMS Happy Children Memorial Fund. And what these guys do is they raise money for victims of domestic violence and people that need to recover from addiction and all sorts of stuff like that. They do really good work, and it's a great cause. And if you get a chance to go out there and support them, please do so. I'm sure they'd appreciate it. They're going to have raffles and giveaways and all sorts of fun stuff and the car show, and it'll be really good. There's a lot of good food out there. The restaurant really makes some really good stuff. So go out there if you get a chance. Please help them out. It's a very, very good cause. Okay, let's get into the rest of the show. So let's talk about the real estate market. The interest rate's gone down. It's just a hair over 6% with most lenders these days. If you're diligent about it, you might even be able to find something just a hair under 6% if you're careful. So that's good. The Fed did release the interest rate, did drop it for the first time in quite some time last week, which is good, or 2 weeks ago, excuse me, which is good. So we're making progress, but we're still not where we need to be. We're still not selling enough houses. There's still aren't enough houses on the market. There aren't enough buyers in the market. We are still in a real estate recession, and I don't mean recession as far as prices are concerned. I mean a recession as far as the amount of buying and selling that is going on. What I'll say in general, and we'll get into the numbers here in just a second, and I've been saying this for the last several months, is if you have a house to sell, it needs to be a deal. Because right now, if it's not a deal, it's not going to sell. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean it needs to be a deal regarding price, although probably. Maybe it's a deal because it's the only one with a great view. Maybe it's the only one in the area that has, maybe it's the only one in the area. But you've got to have something that kind of lifts it above the average listings out there, or your house is simply not going to sell. And that is just the reality, because the buyers that are out there are being patient. Because every day that goes by, they know, every buyer out there should know this, that more inventory is coming to the market slowly, but there are more options now than there were last month, and there are more options next month than there will be this month, because it's taking longer to sell houses. And the interest rate is still going down. I don't think it's going to go down a whole lot. I don't think it's really going to go down a whole lot between now and the end of the year. I hope I'm wrong about that. I'd like to see it hit 5.5, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think we're going to be right around 6 till the end of the year. And then maybe if we're really lucky, by the end of the first quarter of 2025, we'll be down a little lower than that. So that's kind of what's going on. But let's get into the numbers, because the numbers do tell the tale. The market snapshot for Santa Clarita, and this is September 2024, the month that has just passed. I like to go over this with you guys every month because these are the numbers, and they do tell you the trends. So right, the median sales price for all property in Santa Clarita and the Santa Clarita Valley in September of 2024 was $800,000. That is a $15,000 slide from the month before. And the reason for that primarily is just we're not selling as many houses. Single-family home price, the median single-family home price in Santa Clarita Valley is now down to $850,000. That's $50,000 less than the previous month. The median condo price is, however, $595,000, which is $55,000 higher than the previous month. So less expensive stuff is selling, more expensive stuff is not. That's just kind of the reality of the real estate market at the moment. Again, if it's a deal, it'll sell. If it's not, it won't. At least not anytime in the near future. There were 294 new listings that came on the market in Santa Clarita. That's 47 less than last month, which doesn't really belie what's going on. When we get into the San Fernando Valley numbers, you'll see what I'm talking about. We currently are carrying 618 active listings. By the way, just to give you some scope here, there should be about 1,200 listings in the Santa Clarita Valley at any given time. That would be a normal inventory. So 600 is better than it was, or 618 is slightly better than it was a couple months ago, but it's still nowhere near the parity that we need to achieve. So, and that's down 2 from last month, which is essentially the same. We had 172 pending sales in September. It's houses that went pending, although a lot of those are falling out of escrow. We'll talk about that too. And that's essentially unchanged, about three less than last month. There were 225 closed sales in the Santa Clarita Valley in September, and that is down 43 from last month. Now, Santa Clarita Valley, obviously much smaller than the San Fernando Valley, so I like to give you San Fernando as well because it's easier to spot trends when there's more property being bought and sold, and you're looking at a bigger data pool. And goodness knows the San Fernando Valley is a much larger data pool. The average median sales price in the San Fernando Valley is $920,000 for everything. That's down $30,000 from the month before. So we're down $15,000 on average across the board. They're down $30,000 on average across the board. So that should show you where the trend is heading. The single-family home median sales price in the San Fernando Valley is $1,020,000. That's down $50,000 average from the previous month. Condo price $621,000, up $16,000. Very similar to what we're dealing with. So housing prices are starting to slide. Condo prices are starting to go up because people don't want to spend money. Everybody's feeling the pinch. Everybody's nervous. They're worried about the economy. They're worried about the election. Instability is not usually good for most markets. And I wouldn't say we're unstable in this country, but more than usual, I think, at the moment. Every 4 years, we seem to put ourselves through this. Anyway, new listings in the San Fernando Valley, 1,201 new properties came on the market. That's 83 more this month than the last month. 2,278 active listings. That's 160 more than last month. 434 pending sales. That's 56 less than last month. And the number of closed sales in the San Fernando Valley was 603 in September, and that's down 137 units. So what does all this stuff mean? What do we get out of all this? Housing prices are stabilizing, and they're starting to go down a little bit because people are being forced to lower prices to get houses sold. Fewer things are selling, but they are moving, which is good, but not as well as we'd like. And condos are where the prices are starting to appreciate. I shouldn't say starting to, they are appreciating because people are willing to accept less in housing to pay less in a mortgage. And I think that'll change a little bit as interest rates continue to go down, but it's going to be a while. So that's kind of what's going on in the market. But let's talk about, so those are our local numbers. Now let's talk about what's going on in the rest of the country and just kind of what's going on in the market in general. A new report which just came out, this is a really good article from CNN, illustrates just how stuck the housing market is. Just 2.5% of homes in the United States changed hands this year in the first 8 months. That's the lowest turnover rate in the last 30 years. We're selling fewer homes now in this country than we have sold in the last 30 years. It wasn't this bad during the 2008-2009 crisis. It wasn't this bad during the pandemic, but it is that bad now. 30%. This is the lowest amount of homes being sold in the last 30 years. Wait to hear about which county in the country has it the worst. Americans have faced a toxic combination of record high home prices and elevated mortgage rates, creating one of the most unaffordable housing markets in a generation. 7 of the 10 metro areas with the lowest turnover levels this year are in California. 7 out of the 10 lowest turnovers, the least amount of property sold for metro areas compared to the previous years, are in California. Los Angeles saw the lowest turnover rate of any metro with just 15 of every 1,000 homes changing hands. We're number one. Yay! Los Angeles County has had fewer houses change hands compared to what it should be doing, compared to historical norms, than any other county in the country. Houses are just not moving here the way they should. Now that is a 32% drop from the same period in 2019. And according to Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, the homes in the United States with mortgages, approximately 70% of people with mortgages have an interest rate at or below 4%, and an additional 15%, so that makes 85% of the total, have interest rates at or below 5%. That is the lock-in effect. I'll use myself as an example every time we talk about this. I have an interest rate on my house below 3%. My daughter just went off to college. My wife and I would like to sell that house and buy another, but we're not going to do it because I'm not going to trade in my sub 3% mortgage rate for a 6% mortgage rate. That would be ridiculous. My payment would more than double. It would almost triple on the exact same amount of money. So we'll stay in the house we're at. And we're not alone there. A lot of people are doing that. That is the lock-in effect. And it's not going to change until interest rates get down to, I'm saying, about 5.5. That's when we'll reach some sort of normalcy. But we'll see. Another article, Jerome Powell, head of the Fed, said the real issue behind the U.S. housing crisis is, quote, not something the Fed can really fix. That's what you want to hear from the head of your financial markets, that it's not something they're capable of fixing. Well, I tell you what, how about you stop messing around with the interest rate? How about you stop doing unprecedented things like spiking the interest rate when the housing market's already hurting because they're trying to curtail prices, but they're not paying attention to volume. And volume is the issue. It's all well and nice that one house sold on your block for the highest amount ever, and that's great, but there are no other houses selling on your block, and that is not healthy because it won't last. Every market has to have corrections from time to time. We cannot have a situation where real estate just always goes up, because when it goes down, and it will, those of us who remember 2008, 9, and 10 will tell you that, we want it to come down and go back up slowly, calmly. We do not want boom and bust, and that is what the Fed is setting us up for, I fear. Anyway, on September 18th, the Federal Reserve implemented its first rate cut since March of 2020. Literally the first rate cut in 4 years, and that's after spiking the interest rate to literally unprecedented levels. Anytime you see anything out of the Fed that's unprecedented, it's not good news. High home prices and elevated interest rates are making mortgage payments increasingly burdensome for prospective buyers. So the Fed chairman, Jerome Powell, addressed these concerns in a press conference following the September rate cut announcement. He acknowledged that the housing market is, quote, in part frozen. What do you mean in part? Which part isn't frozen? With many home buyers hesitant to sell because they are locked in at lower mortgage rates, what we've been talking about, as rates decrease, more people may be willing to sell, potentially increasing market activity. I love it when the head of the Fed uses words like potential or potentially. However, he noted that each sale could also bring new buyer into the market, so the impact on overall demand remains uncertain. The problem, according to Powell, is that not enough housing supply. We need more houses, according to Powell. Quote, this is not something the Fed can really fix. He is absolutely right. We have a supply problem in this country. We do not have enough housing. That is why one of the reasons the housing market spiked the way it did. That is why the properties went up the way they did. There are a number of other factors, but that's the core of it. And that's why the Fed spiked the interest rate to try to cool housing prices. A far better use of the Fed's time, a far better use of the U.S. government's time would be to make it easier to build. We have a supply problem, especially in California. We have a supply problem that feeds homelessness. We have a supply problem that feeds higher housing prices. We have a supply problem that is damaging to us and to the economy of this state and to the economy of most people who live here. And we know what the problem is. This is easy enough to fix. The government needs to start subsidizing the building of homes. And I don't mean tenements in downtown LA, and I don't mean converting ratty old hotels into ratty old homeless shelters. I mean homes, decent, affordable homes. That is what we need in this state. That is what we need across this country. But that more than anything is what we need in this state, and that is the silver bullet to fix this problem. So why aren't municipalities making it easier to build? I don't know. We're in an election year. Maybe we should ask. Maybe some of the politicians who are running for office ought to be asked that question. What are you doing about the lack of homes available in California? What are you doing about the lack of homes that's available in the Santa Clarita Valley? I'd like an answer to that question. I have yet to hear it asked. Maybe they're answering it and I just don't know. That'd be nice. I'd like somebody to tell me. I'd like to hear that there's a plan of some sort, but nothing. And this problem isn't going to get better. It is going to get worse as time goes on. The amount of renters versus owners in the state of California has been getting worse since I was born in 1971. That was the last year where it was where it made any kind of sense. Every year that goes by, we have more renters and fewer owners in this state. And one of the chief reasons for that is housing prices. And one of the chief reasons for that is not enough supply. Demand will always be constant. People always want to live here. People always want to own houses. It's just a matter of higher or lower, but it will always be constant. We've got to fix this problem, and we're just not doing anything about it. We just aren't, and that's not okay. So anyway, beyond that, my thoughts on the market is I think the market will continue to see interest rate reductions slowly over the next several months, well into 2025. This will create some relief for would-be home buyers, but rate reductions will not get the housing market back to any sense of normalcy until the interest rate reaches 5.5% or lower. Hopefully by the end of the first quarter of 2005, we'll start to see that. Additionally, residential housing inventory will continue to increase throughout the end of the year. This will likely have a detrimental effect on sales prices, but not in any meaningful way. I don't think prices are going to go down necessarily. They're going down a little bit, but I don't think they're really going to go down all that much. What they are going to do is stop going up. And in real estate terms, when housing stops going up, everyone assumes it's going down. Everyone feels like it's going down. And sometimes it just stays flat. But that freaks people out and they think it's going down. And all it takes is one person on your block or one realtor on your block to judge this incorrectly or need to do this. And they drop the price of the house to have a fire sale. And now prices are going down. So we will see what happens, but I don't think it's going to do a whole lot. At this point, the freeze in appreciation is a dramatic slowing rate that will make the appreciation feel much more like a drop than a stabilization. The bottom line, the market is slowly moving from a seller's market, which is what the market has been for the last decade, to a buyer's market. And anytime a market shifts, it's uncomfortable. I think it's necessary, but it's uncomfortable. Right now, we're still, if I was going to put a number on it, I would say we're about 65% seller, 45% buyer. And I don't mean numbers of people buying, I just mean as far as where you are in a transaction, where your power is. It's still a seller's market because there's so little inventory. But it's not really entirely, because I would have said beginning of this year, it was about 90-10, seller versus buyer, as far as who has more power in general in the market. Right now, I would say it's about 65-45, and that number's going to change. And I would say by this time next year, it'll be a buyer's market, if not sooner. It may happen even quicker. So we're about 65-45 as far as who's got the power and the power dynamic for that right now, as far as sellers versus buyers, and that is changing over time. We will be at about 70-30 or worse by the end of the year, or better if you're a buyer, and that's going to continue to go until it reaches parity, which is going to be around, which is the 50-50 mark, which will happen around the first quarter, maybe second or third quarter of next year. We'll see what the interest rates do. So that's kind of where we're at with the market. So if you got something to sell, it needs to be a deal. If it's not a deal, it ain't going to sell. It's going to sit. That's just the reality. Buyers are being more picky because they can be, because there are fewer buyers in the market than there should be. There are also fewer homes on the market than there should be. But homes are coming back a little bit faster than buyers are. So we need to digest the interest rate cut. The Fed will hopefully cut the interest rate again by the end of the year. I figure in the December meeting, although I'm hearing that in their November meeting, there may be some cuts as well, but I doubt it. I think we're going to see that in December. But whenever it is, November, December, I think there'll be at least one more cut by the end of the year. Two would be good too. Interest rate cuts are good for the market, but we have to do so. We have to do it in an intelligent way, because cutting interest rates, if there are no buyers to take advantage of it, doesn't really do us a lot of good. We need to see more stabilization loan programs as well. We need to see more down payment assistance programs. We need to see more stuff that gets people into houses. But the bottom line is we need more houses. That's just the reality. So if you have an opportunity, if you're in that position to talk to one of these people who's running for office, statewide, citywide, whatever, it's not an impolite question. It's not a gotcha question. Just ask, what are we doing about the lack of housing? What is the plan to get more houses to market? What is the plan to get more houses built? I mean, builders in California are doing what they can, goodness knows, but we need to make it easier. We need to build more houses. We need to build in more incentives for this, because we are way, way short of houses. And just to give you one last data point before we move on here and the rest of the show. We're selling right now in LA County, we're selling about 15 houses per 1,000. That's it. A normal level is about 40 houses per 1,000. So that's how far off we are. So we are at the lowest level of volume, the lowest amount of houses sold per capita in Los Angeles County in the last 30 years. And that's a problem. And if you know anybody who works in real estate, title, escrow, lenders, realtors, whatever, they will all tell you this, notaries, they will all tell you the same thing. There is not enough business going on. We are seeing companies starting to merge and falter. We're seeing people leave the industry in droves, even more so in 2008, 9, and 10, because we got a problem. And housing is about 35% overall in this country as part of its GDP. And you cannot have 30% of the economy lag behind the rest of the economy and expect bad things not to happen. Very, very bad things are going to happen. And we're heading toward the precipice of this. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm not looking forward to going over the edge. We did that once before in 2008, 9, and 10. It wasn't fun then. I'm looking forward for a repeat. And if it happens this time, it won't because of unscrupulous bankers. It'll be because of our own fault. We should know better. We just should. And our politicians should certainly know better. So ask them, what's the plan? And if you're a politician running for office and you can hear this and you hear this broadcast, let me know. Come on the show. We'll talk about it. If you got a plan, I want to hear it. If you got a way that'll get more houses built, let's talk about it. That'd be great, because that is our chief problem. So anyway, when we come back, we're going to talk about all things foreclosure defense. I've been getting lots and lots and lots of stuff in the office about foreclosures. It's something we do all the time, a topic near and dear to my heart. Those of you who know, they're fans of the show, listen, we do foreclosure defense for free. I've been doing it for over 30 years. But I'm going to teach you how to do some of this stuff yourself. I'm going to give you some stuff to look for, some do's and don'ts. We're going to go a little bit deeper than we usually do on these sort of topics, because ultimately I usually just say call me, but I want to give you guys the ability to do some of this stuff yourself, as much of this stuff yourself. And then if you get a problem, you can call me. You can always reach me at 661-714-1400. That's my personal cell phone. Again, 661-714-1400. I know it's crazy to give that out on the air. Please feel free to call or text. In the meantime, let's hear from some of the sponsors. We'll go to some commercials. We come back. All things foreclosure defense. The rest of the show is going to be all about foreclosure defense. So you're listening to this, you got somebody in foreclosure, you got somebody in your life who's in trouble, let them know, tune in. It'll be on YouTube as well. All things foreclosure defense, how to prevent yourself from getting into foreclosure. We're seeing more and more by the week. I'm Rich Szerman, your host of the Real Estate Fix on KHTS, AM 1220, FM 98.1, your hometown station. Hey, everybody, welcome back. You're listening to the Real Estate Fix with Rich. I'm your host, Rich. Rich Szerman on KHTS, FM 98.1, AM 1220, your hometown station. My hometown station. I love the station. It's fantastic. By the way, I love this. I listen when I'm not on the air. I listen to this station as well. I really enjoy it. And the show that precedes me, Matt, if you guys are not listening to Matt's show, you are missing out, because it is a fantastic show. And it's, if you live in Santa Clarita and you want to do stuff around town, I'm telling you, listen to that show. You'll know what's going on. And there's some great stuff coming up. There's always great stuff going on in our town. I limit myself to the real estate stuff, but listen to Matt Watson's show. It's fantastic. Anyway, okay, so if you are in foreclosure, the rest of the show, as promised, is going to be about foreclosure defense. So if you are in foreclosure, and we're seeing more and more of these, every month we monitor all the foreclosures in Los Angeles, Ventura, and San Bernardino counties, and I'm telling you, they are going up. Every month that goes by, we're seeing more and more foreclosures. And it's not even just the filings of the notices of default. It is the bank's aggressiveness. So let's go through this real quick. A brief primer on how foreclosure works in California. Okay. First thing that's going to happen is you're going to be behind on your mortgage payment. When you're 90 to 120 days behind on your mortgage payment, depending on the type of mortgage, usually 120, that is when the bank will then file what's called a notice of default. That is the first public step in the foreclosure process, and they are public. We call them NODs, notice of default. Now, when a notice of default is filed, you have 90 days, not 90 business days, 90 calendar days, including weekends, to deal with that default. If you have not done so, the bank will then file on the 91st day or sometime shortly thereafter, they will file what's called a notice of sale, NOS. Now, when a bank files a notice of sale, you have 20 days plus the day for filing, so 21 days, before they conduct the foreclosure sale. So the worst case scenario is you get about 3 to 4 months not making the payment, then you get about 3 months, 90 days to be exact, on the NOD, and then you get about another 3 weeks, 21 days, on the notice of sale before they can foreclose. So really, by the time you start missing payments, you really have about 4, 5, 6, 7, almost 8 months to deal with this before the foreclosure happens, worst case. Most banks take a little longer, but that's where the statutes put it. So again, 90 days after a notice of default, 21 days after a notice of sale, foreclosure sale happens on day number 21. That's the time frame you're dealing with. Now, I tell you that because it's important to get into this process. If you are in trouble, get into the process as soon as possible. I will tell you, every file that comes into my office, we never have enough time. Never, ever, ever do we have enough time. And you do yourself a disservice by waiting. I had somebody in my office yesterday. I talked to him 2 months ago. He did nothing. He messed around with attorneys and other things who weren't able to help him, cost himself a lot of money and got nothing accomplished. And he's got a foreclosure next Thursday, so less than a week from now. So his options for defense are very limited. And in his case, he's going to have to file a bankruptcy. That's really the only thing that's going to protect him. And today's show is not about bankruptcy. Bankruptcy is sort of we've talked about in previous shows, we'll talk about it in future shows. But bankruptcy is sort of the last, in case of emergency, break glass to prevent a foreclosure. We have some very good bankruptcy attorneys in town. I recommend Lou Esmond. He's fantastic. We have some others who are quite good as well. And if you have any questions about that sort of thing, call me after the show. I'll be happy to point you in the right direction. But let's start with what you can do yourself, which will hopefully save the house and avoid a bankruptcy. This is the same stuff we do in my office. This is how we start every file. So first thing, number one, communicate with your bank. If you know you're going to be behind on your mortgage, preferably before you stop making the payment, call them. Every bank in this country has to have some sort of asset loss department. They have no choice. It's the law. You have to have a way to deal with loss mitigation, asset loss, whatever they call it. But there's some sort of default department in every single financial institution in this country. If they do mortgages, they have that. Call them up. Hey, I'm not going to be able to make this much mortgage payment. What options do I have? Start the conversation there. Start it early. The other thing you want to do, get a way to talk to them in writing. You should never trust what a bank tells you because whether through incompetence or malfeasance, they're just not trustworthy. They're just not. I know you guys are all shocked that I'm saying that, everyone, because we all trust banks so well in this country because they're stellar behavior. They're not trustworthy. They're not. They'll lie to you intentionally, unintentionally. They just will. So the first thing you do is you communicate with them. You get a way to communicate with them in writing, either fax or emails or however they're doing it, and you start having these conversations. What are my options? That's where you start. Number two, do this in writing. You make what's called a qualified written request, which is a fancy way of saying just do it in writing. So you write a letter, and the first thing you do is you say, please consider this a qualified written request, which it is, even if you don't say that in there. But for some reason with all these banks, if you use the words qualified written request, it's sort of the magic key that starts to unlock things for you because they know you must know a little bit about what you're doing. So first thing you want to do is you want to make a qualified written request, and here's what you want to ask for and why. I'm going to go through these a little slowly. I know I talk quickly, but I'm going to go through this a little bit slowly because this is really important. The first three things you want to ask for. You can do this even before you're behind, but certainly after you're behind. First thing is you want to demand from them a copy of the note, not the deed, the note. The deed of trust is public record. You can get it from the county assessor's office. Super easy. You don't need their help with that. Now, the deed in California will not typically have the terms of the note on it. And the reason for that is the statute of limitations. If you have the terms of the note on the deed, the bank is limited to, what is it? I think it's 12 years. I have to look it up for 10 years. I think you're limited to 10 years, and if they don't collect, you can't go after zombies like that. So that's why they all leave it off, because it's intentionally taking advantage of a loophole in the law. Now, you need a copy of the note because you need the bank to prove that they have an enforceable debt. If they do not have, you don't need an original, you don't need a signed this or a certified that. That's all nonsense that comes out of internet garbage. What you just need is a copy of the note. That's all you need. In English, signed by everybody, or in Spanish if you did it in Spanish, but you need a copy of the note. Start there. The other thing, because again, they need to prove that it's a valid debt, and that starts with, show me the note. You say, I owe you the money. Sounds good. Show me the note. That's where you start. Next thing, y'all do this all in the same letter. Copy of the accounting going back to the inception of the note. Okay, you guys have a note. You've proven that I owe you the money. Fair enough. Now let's talk about how much I owe. Because I don't trust you guys. I have a right as a consumer. I have a right as a property owner, the guy who's a mortgagee. I have the right to ask for the accounting on the note. It's the law. You have to provide it. You'll find it in both the RESPA-TILA guidelines. We'll talk about those too, and the Homeowner Bill of Rights. We'll talk about all three of those as well today. But a copy of the accounting going back to the inception of the loan. In other words, okay, you got the note, you proved it's a valid debt, I owe you money, fair enough. Now you got to prove how much. And make them prove it. Give me a copy of the accounting. And by the way, the rules are very clear. They have to give you the codes for everything. They have to print it in a certain font at least so you can see the stuff. It has to be dark enough to be read on paper. These are all things we've gotten from banks before. They'll send you stuff that makes no sense intentionally. So you got to force them to give you something that you can read that makes sense. And they have to do that. This is the law on the subject. Third thing, I want a copy of any assignments of the loan. Okay, you guys have proved that you have a note. It's a valid debt. You sent me the accounting. You've proved how much I owe you. Now you got to prove to me that you have the right to collect. Because if you started with Bank of America and it's now PHH or some other collection company that's basically coming after you, make them prove they have the right to do that. So again, get a copy of the note. Prove that the debt exists. That's what the note does. Get a copy of the accounting going back to the inception of the note. That proves how much the debt is. Get a copy of the assignments. Prove that you have the right to collect. So with just those three things, copy of the note, copy of the accounting, and a copy of the assignments, what you have done is you have forced the bank to prove that their debt is valid, to prove the amount of the debt, and to prove that they have the ability to collect. Now, if they're deficient in any one of those areas, they got a problem. They're not going to be able to collect on their loan. So that's why you always demand those. There are other things you do too, but you always start with those three things. Copy of the note, copy of the accounting going back to the inception of the note. Because if they said, we just got the loan last week and the accounting was lost with the first bank for the first 15 years. Tough. Not our problem. You will produce a copy of the accounting or you got a problem collecting this debt. Those are the rules. And a copy of the assignments, which means if it went from bank A to bank B to bank C, et cetera, you were supposed to be given notice. Obviously, you're not as a consumer. They rarely send them because everyone tells me they never get them. But they're supposed to send it. And it doesn't have to be recorded at the assessor's office. It should. It's one of the many things that should change. But they do have to have a copy of it. So they have to prove that they have the right to collect. They have to prove that the note exists, they have to prove the amount, and they have to prove they have the right to collect. Those three simple things. And you'd be amazed at how often the banks cannot produce those three simple things. And if they can't, they got a very hard time getting the note, going after the note. They cannot go after you if they cannot do this. Doesn't mean they won't. Banks break the law all the time, but they're not supposed to. Now, so what we do is we get those three things in the office. First thing we always ask for. Once we get them in the office, which is sometimes going back and forth, forcing the bank to get them to produce it, we go through it. Is there a reversible error we can find? The odds of you finding a reversible error are pretty slim, but I'd say maybe 2 or 3% of the time. But still, it's 2 or 3% of the time, and you might be one of those lucky ones. But really what you want to do is you want to see if there's any reversible errors, the first thing, but you want to see if there's any holes. Do they skip the accounting for 4 or 5, or in one case recently, 14 years? Because if they have, you don't want to go to court on something like that if you can avoid it, because court is expensive and the banks usually win. And if you have a really good case, you go. If you have no other option, you go. But if you have a strong enough case, you can go back to the bank and say, for example, in that case, hey, you guys are missing 14 years of accounting here. You just expect me to take your word on it? No, that's not going to happen. Now, I can do the math too, but I may have given you money during those 14 years. Your previous bank may have gotten money from you the last 14 years. You're not accounting for it. So you may be wrong. We don't know. And it's their job to prove it. It's not your job. It's their job to prove it. So if you get a situation like that, you're going to be able to force a good settlement because they don't want to go to court either. And neither do you. So you can force a settlement and get these things reduced. There's a lot of stuff you can do, but you start with those three things. Those are fundamental. A copy of the note, copy of the accounting going back to the inception of the note, and a copy of any assignments. Those three things are absolutely crucial. Those are the foundations of any foreclosure defense. So you get those three things and see what they have to say. And if it looks like gobbledygook and you don't understand it, because it's meant to, go to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau's website. Go to the Attorney General of California's website. There are many places that will help you decode this. Call me. I'll help you decode it. I do it for people all the time. I just had a lady in New Jersey send me a thing. She didn't understand it. I went through it with her. It took us 20 minutes. Now she understands it. It's no big deal. And again, for those of you listening, you can always call me at 661-714-1400. Again, that's my personal cell phone. You can reach me at that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And if for some reason I don't answer, please send me a text and I will call you back as soon as I can. But yeah, let's just get into it. Let's get the data, digest the data, and see where you're at. Because they got to show their work. It's like homework. They got to show their homework. If they don't, they can't collect. Okay, so let's talk about the laws involved here. There are 3 laws. There are many more, but there are 3 laws in California specifically. 2 of them are federal, 1 of them is state, that I want to at least bring your attention to, and then after the break, we'll come back and do a little bit of a deep dive on them. But these are the 3 laws. If you're going to research this stuff yourself, and I would encourage you to do so. And again, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau has a great website for this, CFPB. The Attorney General has a great website for this. The legislature of the state of California. Anytime we pass a bill, there is the bill itself. There's the law itself. But then there's a synopsis of it. And the synopsis are great. The people who work on staff in Sacramento do a fantastic job doing this. They really do. They make it very simple. So you can go to it and you try to read the law and go, oh my gosh. And then back up a little bit, go to the top of the page. There'll be a summary of what that bill did, what that law does. And we've been posting these for decades. So you can go back years and years and years and years and see what these things are. Anyway, these are the 3 things you need to pay attention to. The Homeowner Bill of Rights, usually called CalHBOR, HBOR, Homeowner Bill of Rights. That's number 1. This is unique to California. Every state has a version of it. We started this. I cannot overestimate to you the importance of the California Homeowner Bill of Rights because it really came into being in 2010, and I was doing foreclosure defense long before it. And I will tell you, there has been a massive change since we got that bill. Consumers, homeowners have way more protections now, have way more rights now because of the Homeowner Bill of Rights. Without that, it was much more complicated. With that, we do a lot more loan modifications. We save a lot more houses. That is a very, very valuable tool. I would say beyond our own sort of base of knowledge for doing this for 30 years, I would say that's probably the single most important tool that I have in my bag these days is the California Homeowner Bill of Rights. So start there. And if you're getting this in another state, your state has a version of it. Louisiana's is a little bizarre, but your state has a version, so is Texas. But your state has a version of it. See what it has to say, because you're going to defend yourself on both city, county, state, and federal level. That's how you do this. So I'm starting at state because city and county are a lot more complicated, honestly. But start with the Homeowner Bill of Rights. Start there. CalHBOR, HBOR, the California Homeowner Bill of Rights came into existence in 2010. We'll talk about it more after the break, but start there. Next 2 laws are federal. One is RESPA, the Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act, and Regulations X and Z. Again, RESPA, R-E-S-P-A, Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act. It's federal law. And you want Regulations X and Z inside there. And the Truth in Lending is the other one. TILA, T-I-L-A, Truth in Lending, also federal. And that has to do with, did you get a square deal when you bought the house, when you first got the mortgage, I should say. Was everything disclosed to you the way it was supposed to? We're going to talk about some things to look for in a bad lender. It's what TILA calls out as ways to protect yourself. So HBOR, California HBOR, it's a state law. RESPA, Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act, federal law. TILA, Truth in Lending Act, federal law. So, and if I said that too quick, you can always call me. I'll walk you through it. But those are the 3 things you want to look for. HBOR, RESPA, TILA. Those are the 3 most, now there are others, but those are the 3 most important things. So I tell you what, I see by the clock on the wall, it's time for another break. So why don't we go hear from some of our advertisers, and we come back, and please come back. I know this is going to sound really dry, but if you're in trouble, this becomes really important. Please come back after the break. So we're going to talk a little bit more about HBOR, RESPA, and TILA. I'll give you a short synopsis on each one of them so you know exactly what they are and how to use them, because that's absolutely key. So listen to the break and come back when we're done. We'll go into it deeply, and you'll be able to defend yourself from foreclosure and be able to share this with your friends and neighbors. I'm Rich Szerman. You're listening to The Real Estate Fix with Rich on KHTS FM 98.1, AM 1220, your hometown station. Hello, everybody. You're listening to The Real Estate Fix. I'm your host, Rich Szerman, on KHTS, FM 98.1, AM 1220, your hometown station. And thank you guys for listening through the break. We always appreciate that. Please support the advertisers because they support the show so we can bring this stuff to you. So we were talking all about foreclosure defense. So when we left for the break, we're talking about the 3 things: Homeowner Bill of Rights, Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act, and Truth in Lending. And here's why these things are important. The California Homeowner Bill of Rights is a set of laws that provides protections to homeowners who are facing foreclosure. It became law on January 1st, 2013. I actually started in 2010, with many sections renewed and modified as of January 2019. Here are the things that are important about this. This is the stuff the bank, the servicer, must do. If they do not do these things, they are breaking the law. And they're not going to tell you they're breaking the law. You need to tell them. Number 1, notification of foreclosure options. Your servicer must try to contact you at least 30 days before starting the foreclosure process to discuss your financial situation and explore your options to avoid foreclosure. They've got to reach out to you. They have to. It's the law. Guaranteed single point of contact. When you're dealing with the bank, they're supposed to assign one person or possibly a team, one person to talk to you. If they don't, or if you can never reach that person, they're breaking the law. Acknowledgement of your application. When you send in an application to them, they have 5 days from their receipt, so you got to call and make sure they got it, to get back to you and let you know if there are any errors, if it's complete. They must also make you aware if there are any other deadlines that you need to meet. If they don't do that, they're breaking the law. Restriction on fees. If a bank says, we'll be happy to look at your request for loss mitigation, we'll be happy to look at your loan mod request, but you have to pay us up front to do that. That is 100% illegal. Servicer cannot charge a fee for applying for modification. If they do so, they're breaking the law. You getting the trend of this here? Restriction on dual tracking. This is a big one. A bank cannot pursue a foreclosure at the same time they're pursuing any loss mitigation efforts. That's loan modification, that's deed in lieu if you're giving them back the house, any sort of loan modification efforts, I should say loss mitigation efforts. If you're pursuing anything, they cannot dual track. They cannot foreclose while they're doing anything else. That is incredibly important. If they do that, they're breaking the law. Denial rights. If your servicer turns down your modification request or your loss mitigation request, whatever it may be, they have to tell you in writing, and they have to tell you why. If they do not tell you why, and they do not give you the right to appeal, they're breaking the law. You have that right. Transfer rights. If you do a deal with a bank and the bank transfers it to another bank, which happens a lot, and that bank says, yeah, we're not going to follow that. Doesn't matter what you talk to the old guy's not my problem. We're a new bank. You have to do it. No, wrong. They have to abide by whatever the previous bank did. If they do not abide by the agreement that you had previously entered into, they're breaking the law. So I've just given you 7 things in the Homeowner Bill of Rights where if the bank doesn't adhere to these 7 things, they are breaking the law. Let's move on because we're running out of time. We're always got more show than we got time. Let's talk about RESPA. RESPA and the Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act, federal law. Cal HTS is state. RESPA and Regulation X and Z are federal laws that regulate the real estate settlement process and the mortgage lending practices. It's been federal law since 1974 and has been amended multiple times over the years. Originally, the law had the intent of informing consumers of their settlement cost and prohibiting kickbacks. However, RESPA has now been expanded to also require lenders, mortgage brokers, or servicers, or other home loan professionals to provide disclosures to borrowers concerning real estate transactions, settlement services, and consumer protection laws. There are laws under RESPA that must be disclosed to you as the consumer. The mortgage servicing rules also implement provisions of the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act, the Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act, and Truth in Lending, which we're also going to talk about. In other words, RESPA is there to protect the consumer. If they are not following those protections, they're breaking the law. And with RESPA, if they break the law, you can hit them for $3,000 per accident, let's call it that, per break in the law, per incident. But you got to prove it. You got to prove a pattern. You got to judge who buys into this. But it does allow for $3,000 per violation. So you can prove a pattern. It can be very pricey for them, which is, again, what keeps them from breaking the law. You got to tell them. TILA, Truth in Lending. TILA protects you against inaccurate and unfair credit billing and credit practices. It requires lenders to provide you with the loan cost information so that you can compare and shop with certain types. If you did not get that comparison when you took out the loan, the lender broke the law. And you may have a case you can do something with. These are all things we look for. So again, get into those, do a deep dive. Before we run out of time, there's one last thing I want to go over with you guys. Under the Truth in Lending Act, the Federal Trade Commission has put out a piece of advice that has 7 things that you should watch for in dealing with a lender. This is just buyer beware stuff, right? Number 1, avoid any lender who wants you to apply to borrow more money than you need. If you need $100,000 and they insist on lending you $200,000, don't work with that lender. They're not doing you a favor. They're setting you up for a fall. It's usually called a debt trap. Don't do that. Number 2, don't deal with a lender who wants you to get financing with monthly payments bigger than you can comfortably make. Don't take out a loan you can't afford. Don't let them talk you into taking out a loan you can't afford. For goodness sake, apply some common sense. If you cannot afford it, don't take the loan. Number 3, never work with a lender who wants you to lie on a financing application. This should be obvious. Don't commit fraud. Don't lie on a financing application, like saying your income is higher than it is because the lender told you it was okay. I assure you it is not. That's loan fraud. That's a good way to lose your house. Don't do that. Number 4, avoid lenders who say to sign blank forms, and they'll just fill in the blanks later for you. For goodness sake, this is your financial, you're applying for a loan. You could be found fraudulent. You could be found liable for loan fraud. Do not do that. Don't fill out blank applications. Never work with a lender who says you'll have copies of the documents that you never and won't give you copies. You sign anything in real estate, you get a copy of it. That's the law. You sign it, you get a copy. And if they don't provide you with a copy, walk out. Number 6, don't deal with any lender who tells you not to read the financial disclosures. Come on. That should be self-explanatory. They're trying to get you to prevent you from reading disclosures because they don't want you to know them. And this is my last one of my favorites, number 7. Be sure to avoid any lender who promises you one deal when you apply, but gives you a different set of terms to sign. No good explanation of the charges. This is commonly called bait and switch, and it's also very, very common, and it is very, very illegal. So don't sign blank forms. Don't lie on an application. And for goodness sake, don't take a deal unless it was the deal that was offered to you. And if a lender offers you 5.5%, and when you go to buy a house, the best they can deliver is 6.5%, you need to go find another lender. You need to do something else because that lender is not credible. That lender is, a liar. That lender is fraudulent. You should never work with somebody like that. So this is all common sense stuff, but we all tend to check our common sense. We're busy talking about large sums of money, and we're talking about buying a house. So just do these things thoughtfully. And if you have any questions, call me anytime. You can reach me again. I'll give out my phone number again, 661-714-1400. You can also reach me through the station. Call KHTS. Go to their website. You'll find me. I have a very unique last name. It's pronounced Sherman, but it's spelled Szerman. Because there's a Z where the H belongs for no apparent reason whatsoever. They tell me it's Russian-Polish ancestry. But anyway, Sherman with a Z, Szerman. You can always just Google my name, find all sorts of stuff about me, and get a hold of me and talk to me about this stuff. So if you have problems with anything that has to do with real estate, give me a call. If I don't know the answer, I know the person who does. I've been doing this for 34 years, April. So almost 30, so 33 and a half. If you have questions, bring them to me. I'll get them answered for you. If you have problems, bring them to me. I'll get them answered for you. We answer these things. We fix these things. We do it totally for free. The last thing I want to end with you guys with, we do foreclosure defense for free. So I would also submit that anyone who charges you, especially anyone who charges you up front for foreclosure defense, probably not reputable. I know some good attorneys who charge retainers. That's fine. But yeah, you shouldn't be paying up front for foreclosure defense, in my view. You just shouldn't. There are plenty of free resources out there. I'm one of them. Please take advantage of it. Again, my name is Rich Szerman. You've been listening to The Real Estate Fix with Rich on KHTS, AM 1220, FM 98.1. My name is Rich Szerman. I'm with Radius Agent. I'm not an attorney. I always like to point that out. I just sound like one, which makes my grandmother happy. But you can reach me at 661-714-1400 anytime, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If I don't answer, send me a text. I will call you back, I promise. Again, my name is Rich Szerman. This is The Fix with Rich on KHTS. Thank you guys for listening. You guys have a good week. Be good humans. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.